Welcome to the end of day review for Monday, the 25th of March 2024. Starting off with the economic calendar, there were no red folder news events and this had no bearing on our trading. And then moving on to the daily chart for GBPUSD, what we can see is there's actually no consecutive, well, there isn't three consecutive bullish or bearish candles, and thus there's no daily bias. From a 4H perspective, we're still in an unconfirmed market trend, and that's purely because quite recently we changed character and we are yet to validate a break of structure. As a result of that, we have two legs that we are operating under. The first is the Protein unconfirmed leg, being this leg right here, and then the Protein previously confirmed primary leg being this leg right there. In terms of yesterday, or in terms of today's end of day review, we actually reacted to this Protein unconfirmed 4HOB, and that was the basis for our idea to trade long. Remember, we're in an unconfirmed scenario, so we need three elements, the first being a 4HOB to back the idea to long, the next being a substructure high to target, and then internal range liquidity being available on the 5 minute, which it was. And then a separate consideration is once we reach the barrier being this unconfirmed or previously confirmed Protein OB, which may or may not hold. So that's a separate factor to consider. So essentially we came into the morning in anticipation for the longs, and that's precisely what played out. However, as you can see, the Asia low was what held for the day, but the problem with this is there's a 60% or almost 60% chance that both sides of the Asia range will be swept, and thus I was hoping that the Frankfurt session will take out the Asia low, and then the Frankfurt low of the day will be validated by London to then have the additional confluence of the current day Asia high to then continue trading to the upside. However, that didn't materialize and we were unable to validate the Asia low of the day. We can validate the Asia low only if we have red folder news to support why this low should hold, or we are in an external range continuation momentum scenario, but we're in an unconfirmed scenario, so that wasn't an option. And since we don't trade based on London highs and lows of the days, our next option was the New York high or low of the day, but again that had no red folder news to support any of those ideas. In addition to that, we already achieved the daily range, or 70% thereof, and thus trading wasn't valid for the remainder of the session. And thus after the London session opened, whilst the Asia range was intact, I knew that my trading was done for the day, because London was going to put in the high or low of the day, and we don't trade, and we couldn't trade a New York base high or low of the day, so that was pretty much that. So that's GBPUSD done. Then moving on to EURUSD. So again, starting with the daily, there isn't three consecutive bearish candles, and thus we have no daily bias for longs. So we rely on the 4H technical analysis narrative, and similarly to TU, we recently broke market structure to the downside, and we're in an unconfirmed state, with this being the Protein unconfirmed leg, and then this being the Protein previously confirmed primary leg. In terms of yesterday's PA, if we focus on the substructure, what we can see is that we were between two 4H OBs, both of which could play out, and it just made a lot more sense to trade shorts rather than longs at the start of the morning. In terms of the scenario, like I said, unconfirmed scenario, so the same three rules that I mentioned for GBPUSD would apply to this day, and we'll chat about that some more in the 5 minutes. So I took one loss here, and that's because, like I was saying earlier, it was easier to take a short than a long, and that's simply because of the fact that we reacted to the 4H demand into the 4H supply. We then had a Frankfurt high of the day, which was validated by London. So you can see we had the demand break, and then London right here broke the Frankfurt range, and thus validated that the Frankfurt high of the day was likely to hold. I then had my order set at this level when this low was taken. Obviously it got triggered. I didn't break even because I know there's a good chance that the Asia liquidity will be taken, but that didn't materialize for today or for that day, and thus we took a loss. I think the key thing to point out here is we did have internal range liquidity right here, which I can highlight. So that's your leg. This being the substructure lows, this being the last point of IRL, and whilst we took out this liquidity, we didn't come all the way down to take out here. In terms of trading longs, it was particularly tricky because we have this barrier of the 4HOB to contend with, and in this leg in particular there wasn't any reason to believe that we could validate internal range liquidity. In addition to validate trading long, we'd need a Frankfurt low of the day, and that didn't happen, so for that reason we didn't get into any longs. And similarly to the reason set for GU, there wasn't reason to trade the New York session high or low of the day because there's no support, and then obviously we don't trade Frankfurt highs or low of the days, and an Asia low of the day couldn't be validated because we don't have red folder news, and we don't have, and we're not in an ERL continuation momentum scenario. So that's EU where we took one loss, and then moving on to USDCAD. Whilst USDCAD didn't present an opportunity, the interpretation is much simpler. So from a daily perspective, again, we don't have three bullish consecutive candles to indicate a daily bias. So again, we rely on 4H technical analysis narrative. On USDCAD, we have this large leg, but we are in a pro-trend confirmed scenario with the bearish market structure confirmed. We have been reacting to this pro-trend extreme for quite some time now, and it's not clear if it's going to hold, but if we simply just follow our plan without questioning it, then we know that shorts make the most sense at the moment. So the pullback phase last point of supply has failed, and thus we can assume that the pullback phase is completed, and thus we've created the pro-trend confirmed primary leg right here and a pro-trend confirmed OBE, which was wicked I believe on Friday. So the idea was definitely to short for the morning, but again we had an Asia high of the day with no news to validate why this Asia high of the day should hold. So again, my idea for the morning was that Frankfurt would put in a high of the day, be validated by London, and then we'll take that trade and likely have available Asia liquidity, but that didn't materialize, and so there was no trades on USDCAD. And that's pretty much my end of day review. I hope you had a good trading day, and we'll chat again for the London outlook.